The day respect came home. In the quiet town of Willow Ridge, nestled between low hills and stretching fields of golden grass, life moved with a gentle rhythm. Children rode bicycles down sun-dappled streets, neighbors waved from their porches, and everyone, it seemed, knew everyone else. It wasn't the kind of place where scandals brewed often, nor where people feared the police. The station downtown had only a handful of officers, most of them familiar faces seen at the diner or the Saturday farmers market. But one day, a seemingly minor incident would jolt the town awake, and in doing so, remind them all what dignity truly meant. The morning had started like any other. Birds chirped in the still air, and the warm scent of fresh bread drifted from old Miss Keller's bakery. Mr. Harold Gentry, known simply as Old Hal to most, was making his usual walk from the corner store, where he picked up a few items every Thursday. He was 83 years old, a man of routines and simple pleasures. With his cane tapping softly against the sidewalk, he strolled in no rush, humming a tune from decades past. Hal had lived in Willow Ridge his whole life. He had been a school teacher, a baseball coach, and later in life, the town's amateur historian. People smiled when they saw him. Kids greeted him with a Mr. G as they biked past. But that morning, as Hal passed Maple Street on his return home, something caught his attention, a squad car parked halfway onto the curb, idling, with its windows rolled down. Inside sat two patrol officers, Jeremy Klein and Todd Brewer. Jeremy and Todd were young. Too young, perhaps, for the uniforms they wore. Both were in their late 20s, fresh out of the academy only a couple years ago, and had quickly earned a reputation for being more interested in goofing off than enforcing the law. Their favorite pastime seemed to be bothering teenagers at the skate park or pulling people over for broken taillights, only to crack jokes about their cars afterward. They weren't malicious, just careless. And in a town like Willow Ridge, carelessness could go unnoticed for far too long. As Hal neared the car, he saw the two men glance his way. Jeremy elbowed Todd and said something under his breath. Todd chuckled. Hal, already close enough, heard the remark loud and clear. Look at that old tortoise hobbling down the sidewalk. Jeremy added with a laugh, but he started walking yesterday. Their voices weren't loud, but they weren't trying to hide them either. Hal stopped. For a moment, the only sound was the wind rustling the leaves overhead. Then Hal did something unexpected. He straightened his back, lifted his chin, and turned toward the car. His gait, though slow, was steady as he approached the open window. "Excuse me, gentlemen," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "Is there something amusing about the way I walk?" Todd glanced at Jeremy and smirked. Jeremy said, "No offense, sir. Just passing the time." "Passing the time?" Hal repeated. "By mocking someone walking home from the store?" "Come on," Todd said, chuckling. "Don't take it so serious, old man. We're just having fun." There it was, that condescension, laced with the invincibility of a badge. Jeremy even let out a louder laugh, as if to punctuate how little he cared. A few passers-by had started to slow down, catching the tension in the air. Hal looked at them both, his weathered face unreadable. Then, without another word, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a cell phone. His hand shook slightly, not with anger, but with age. He dialed a number. A pause. Then he spoke one name. Richard. That was all. He ended the call, put the phone away, and stood silently beside the squad car. 10 minutes passed. The officers, half amused and half bored, didn't think much of it. But the townspeople who'd begun to gather near the sidewalk knew better. They knew who Richard was. A black SUV with tinted windows turned onto Maple Street, moving slowly but with unmistakable purpose. It came to a stop behind the patrol car. The rear door opened, and out stepped a tall man in a crisp navy blue uniform adorned with polished insignia and silver pins. Chief Richard Gentry, Willow Ridge's police chief for the last 9 years. More importantly, Harold Gentry's son. The crowd hushed. Even the leaves seemed to still in the trees. Chief Gentry didn't raise his voice. He didn't slam any doors or bark orders. He simply walked over to his father, placed a hand gently on the man's shoulder, then turned to the patrol car. His voice was calm, but cold enough to cut stone. "Step out of the vehicle. Both of you." Jeremy's face went pale. Todd hesitated. But something in Richard Gentry's gaze told them not to argue. They stepped out. "Did you mock this man?" Silence. "I asked you a question." Todd spoke first, his voice small. "We were just kidding around. Didn't mean anything by it." "But you did it?" They nodded. Richard's next words were louder, but still measured. "Remove your badges. Now." They blinked. "Chief, come on. This is I said, take them off." There was no room for negotiation. Slowly, Almost mechanically, both officers unpinned their badges and handed them over. Then came the shoulder straps, then their belts. Richard accepted them without a word, his face blank. "You're both suspended pending termination review. Leave your sidearms in your vehicles and report to Internal Affairs by noon tomorrow." Jeremy looked as if he might cry. Todd looked as if he wanted to run. The SUV's engine hummed as Richard walked his father to the back seat and helped him in. Before stepping inside himself, the chief turned once more to the crowd that had silently watched everything unfold. "Let this be clear," he said. No one gets to treat our elders like a joke. Not in my department. Not in my town." And then he left. The story spread through Willow Ridge like wildfire. Within hours, the coffee shop was buzzing, the phones at the station rang off the hook, and Facebook was flooded with variations of the same message. Respect isn't optional. Not anymore. At the police station, the air changed. Officers who had once shared inside jokes behind closed doors now walked a little straighter. They listened more carefully. They responded with a new tone, measured, respectful, and, above all, professional. At the next city council meeting, Chief Gentry introduced a new policy: mandatory community empathy training for all officers, regardless of rank or experience. He personally oversaw its implementation. Local teens, once harassed for gathering at the skate park, were now approached differently. Officers began to attend town hall meetings not to posture, but to listen. 1 month later, Hal himself was invited to speak during a department-wide workshop. He accepted, with dignity. "I don't want apologies," he told the room of uniformed officers. "I want you to remember that every person you meet carries a story. Sometimes that story is written in wrinkles and a slow gait. Sometimes it's hidden in silence. But it always deserves respect." They stood when he left the room. Every single one of them. And so, in a town where nothing much ever seemed to happen, something did. Willow Ridge didn't change overnight. But it did change. Because of a cane. Because of a man who refused to be mocked. Because of a son who understood that true power lies not in commanding fear, but in enforcing respect. And because sometimes it takes only one moment of quiet defiance to remind an entire community that dignity isn't given, it's upheld. Forever after, whenever someone in Willow Ridge talked about the importance of integrity, someone would always bring up that day on Maple Street. The day the chief came. The day the town stood still. The day respect came home.